Hello guys, I'm here again for the second installment of the rivalry between Fraps vs Dxtory, using the latest addition to the Assassin's Creed series, Assassin's Creed Revelations. This is part 1 of testing playing Desmond's Journey in Assassin's Creed. This time, I'm only testing 2 codecs for Dxtory between Fraps from 720p to 1080p. 6 parts of the video will be compared, showing the FPS test and recording test. To the upper right is the gameplay FPS, and to the upper left is the recording FPS. The first 3 videos are tested using the game resolution of 720p. And then on the cubes part, both the gameplay and recording FPS both drop to 40 frames per second. Then, the gameplay FPS bounced back to 60 frames per second after traversing the second gap. Again, recording to the tops of 50 frames per second. The next one is Dxtory's default codec on UE410 recording at 720p uncompressed. I've included the recording and gameplay FPS for rivalry, positioned at the second row of the FPS counters. It is synced at 6 specific points, namely when the platform first showed up to the shaft, cubes forming just the elevator, at the front of the first gap, at the front of the second gap, and then the falling part. In the comparison, it seems Dxtory is performing better than rivalry, beating rivalry on recording and the gameplay FPS while recording the video. The next is Fraps is recording at 720p. The second row of the FPS counter is Dxtory, and the last row is rivalry. In the comparison, it seems that Fraps and Dxtory are neck and neck on this one. Dxtory only fell behind in the cubes part where it stutters a little bit against Fraps. Unfortunately, rivalry was far behind between Fraps and Dxtory. It only maxed its recording FPS to 50 and gave less FPS than those two. Let's move on to the 1080p test. First up on the list is rivalry. Rivalry, however, is taking a lot of hit on the gameplay FPS on this one, moreover on the recording FPS. Rivalry still managed to not go less than 30 frames per second in the gameplay FPS. Then again, the recording FPS only averaged at 22 frames per second. The next one is Dxtory's default codec set on UE410 uncompressed. In this one, Dxtory's raw video stutters a lot, and was only fixed due to the re-encode done in Handbrake. Handbrake is a free video re-encoder. Download link to the program is in the details of the video. The proof is easily seen in the jumping recording FPS of Dxtory. Just like rivalry, Dxtory managed to not drop below 30 frames per second in gameplay, but it performs a bit better than rivalry in some places. Last on the list is Fraps recording on 1080p. In the comparison, Dxtory gameplay in the shaft performs better than Fraps, having a stable of 60 frames per second. But the recording FPS in Fraps is higher compared to Dxtory and rivalry. In the cubes part, Fraps managed to not drop the recording and gameplay FPS to 30. Unlike Fraps, both dropped the recording FPS below 25. There were parts in the video where all 3 of them have the same gameplay FPS, which is amazing. In the end, for 720p recording, Dxtory and Fraps were deadlocked in each other. And for 1080p, there are split opinions for this one. If you're recording a fast-paced game like a shooting FPS game and needs more gameplay FPS than recording, I'm suggesting to use Dxtory as it gives better gameplay FPS. But for those players that want stable video recording, I'm suggesting to use Fraps as the gameplay and recording FPS are the same. That's for this one. I'm sorry if part 2 took so long to make, as could bog my schedule down. For the next test, I will still try to benchmark Valve's games, since I was not expecting myself to buy Assassin's Creed Revelations immediately after its release date.